Hi there. HBO is making a live-action adaptation TV series of the popular video game franchise, The Last of Us. And today they announced who's going to be in the starring roles. First, that Bella Ramsey will be Ellie. Bella Ramsey was Lyanna Mormont in Game of Thrones. And then they just announced that Pedro Pascal will be Joel. So this is big news for both of them. The showrunner is Craig Mazin, who did Chernobyl, and is infamously the guy who told Benioff and Weiss after the Game of Thrones pilot, "You guys have a massive problem. This is unwatchable." So I loved Chernobyl. Mazin's great. I'm pretty sure he can do a good job with this. And this is all just audio only because I just have some thoughts on this, that I am not the biggest fan of this franchise, and just to let you know, there was some controversy when the second came out. Some people hated it. And to be honest, I liked the story verse, that it's this realistic zombie apocalypse, in that the zombie plague is really a fungal infection, which real-life funguses are capable of doing this to ants and stuff, cordyceps. So it's this real fungal infection that takes over your brain, mutates you, and just the level design, and just one of those life after people things, that this is what the world looks like after so many years of much of it falling into ruin, and there's raiders everywhere, that I liked the immersion of it, but I didn't like the specific storyline in it. So for people who didn't like part 2, I I thought it was pretty much in keeping with part 1. I didn't like part 1, that it was this downer story. And, what am I saying? This is what post-apocalyptic stories are like the Walking Dead franchise. How many episodes have characters randomly die? Oh wow, the story is such a downer. It's set in the post-apocalypse, of course it's going to be. So I didn't think part 2 is that different from part 1, but it's one of those games where I don't play for the story, I play for the immersion of it. And this is from a guy who loves BioShock, where I felt they had a good story and good immersion, but you could just sandbox play in Rapture for a long time. They're apocalyptic in their own way, I guess. So all that yelling about part 2, just I can see where you're coming from, and it's good to have constructive criticism. A fertile franchise needs that, but I don't think they were pushing some kind of agenda with stuff. This is a downer series in general, and maybe they were trying too hard compared to the first one. I don't know, but I didn't think it was that big of a difference that I really felt betrayed or anything. That just I play for the sandbox play. I'm not really into the storyline. But that's just me. That's my opinion. I'm not saying anyone else needs to think what I think on this. Just, it's not my fight. I'm really not invested in it enough to be upset about. But I wish them well with their TV show. What I really wanted to talk about wasn't that. It's, instead of just coming here to fanboy out about, oh my God, they got Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey on it, or to go, I hate this. I'm not as excited with... Well, the point of this video is I'm worried about typecasting child actors, is why I made this video. The Pedro Pascal being Joel, that's amazing, but we heard about that second. I started writing this video when we first heard Ramsey was in it, and then only near the end of it, before I started recording, they say, and Pedro's in it too, so that restored my faith in it a little. But I've got conflicted feelings about this, on a couple of points. First, I worry about exploiting child actors, and exploiting might be a strong word, but let's say pressuring child actors, okay? Because particularly this week in the United States, if you're outside the US, you might not have heard of all this, I'm not sure. This week, there were a lot of things coming out in the news unrelated to this, such as the Free Britney Spears documentary came out, which had all these complaints in it about how they were trying to craft her into this artificial persona and the pressure she was under. And on top of that, all these other things coming out about Joss Whedon, from multiple Buffy the Vampire Slayer cast members who have just come out and disowned him and said he's a complete tyrant, and he was abusive, not physically in the sense of toxic management. He was willing to pressure them and yell at them because he could get away with it. Because, well, you're just some teenage girl. I'm an executive producer. I can tyrannize everyone. And not sexually, just he was a bad boss. And then, they said, oh, you're a bunch of toxic fans. When, like, Ray Fisher said he really was a bad boss on Justice League. And they said, oh, you're toxic fans. You don't deserve the Snyder Cut. It's when this many people across this many years are saying Joss Whedon was tyrannizing people and it was really making it impossible to work. And I know you give people slack, like if you're Stanley Kubrick, where he was also a very demanding boss, but he was putting out good work. But even so, there's limits to this, where this is genuine abuse. And you can't keep doing this. It's getting beyond an acceptable level. And you're going drunk on power. So I don't know about that. But that's the Whedon thing is different from me. I'm thinking more in terms of the Britney Spears thing of just how much the public persona is something crafted by a PR team. And the actor has to live up to that. And all of this has been in the news now, but this is nothing new. It's an unfortunately common trope. I mean, really a cliche, but it's true, of child actors who seemed happy in the public eye and then as they aged up struggled to get out of that typecasting and get into other roles in their careers. So rather than just a knee-jerk, wow, Bella Ramsey, she's so feisty, I'm like, I like her, but I don't want her to be typecast. Because she was typecast even on Game of Thrones. That she was only supposed to be in one episode, and when they go to Bear Island, and then maybe like a few scenes in other episodes, then they actually rewrote the final episode of the season, so that Wyman Manderly's big speech before the Northern Lords declaring Jon Snow king, they took from Wyman, who's an important character in the books, and gave it to Bella Ramsey, not because it's important for Lyanna Mormont, but because, we're just showing off the actors and playing favorites. And they did this all the time with other cast members. It wasn't limited to just her. And I've posted clips of this, I'll link them at the end, from the Blu-ray commentary of they're not treating Lyanna Mormont as this interesting new, rounded character. They just typecast her as the feisty young girl who's a tomboy, basically an Arya knockoff. And they just kept doing it over and over again. Did you notice that even though Arya returned to Winterfell in Season 7, she never has a scene with Lyanna Mormont? Even though they're relatively important speaking roles, particularly during the Season 8 battle scenes, I guess because it's that TV tropes thing of lazy writing where you have the different guys on the team and then the girl, the token girl who has no distinct personality. So if you ever had more than one on screen, you'd realize they're all the same character. That this was just typecasting in that, look how cute and feisty the tomboy is, which they did that to Arya even more, that they wouldn't let her grow as a character. And that's why Season 7 was so bad. They just leaned into it. And then people complain when she was, like, romancing with Gendry, and it's, but she's a little girl. It's like, she was 11 7 seasons ago. She's 18 now. And even, like, the weird thing was TV fans were freaked out by that, whereas, because the TV show had been reduced to typecasting, whereas book fans who hated the show didn't really have a problem with Arya being in a relationship with Gendry, because from the books we're used to characters aging over time. So if anything, it felt like, wow, this is much forgotten character growth, that you should have been doing more of this kind of thing instead of just treating her as Arya, badass ninja. It's like every time Arya comes on screen in the commentary track, Benioff will just go, Arya, she's badass. And he says badass so many times it loses all meaning, that this isn't meaningful characterization for Lyanna Mormont. And all of this typecasting ties in with a larger thing I talk about in other videos called a Q rating, which George R. R. Martin talked about after the show ended. And you'll come to hate this term. Media corporations realize a character's popular through they do audience testing, a rating how much of this character do you want to see more, and it's called a Q rating. And after all this demographic research, they just start overusing those characters, typecasting the actor and overusing them relentlessly. And this isn't limited to Game of Thrones, I realized. It's a widespread thing that Richard Plepler's HBO really ruined a lot of their own shows with. Thankfully, he's not around anymore. But True Blood. When I talked to True Blood fans and realized they had the same problems we did, that they said around the time Plepler took over, which was for True Blood, was season 4. Season 4 onward, it turned into the Eric, Pam, and Lafayette show. And yeah, you do need a reboot of that. They've been talking about a new reboot with new leadership because you marginalized the other characters, then took the most popular characters and typecast them. It's also called flanderizing. You flanderized and typecast and overused these stereotypes of themselves to the point they weren't interesting anymore. Game of Thrones did that too. I mean, all over the place. Tyrion turned into I drink and I know things, this stereotype of himself. Jon Snow was brooding face, I don't want it, my queen. And Bronn, oh god, Bronn's funny, so let's start overusing him to death. This happened to everyone. Arya particularly, everyone this happened to. And you saw this happening even to people like Lyanna Mormont. She had this one great scene, and even though she showed up again in the finale of Season 6 and Season 7 and Season 8, it's the same thing over and over again, typecasting her. And on a larger scale, I worry about Maisie Williams' career going forward, because everyone thinks she's Arya and doesn't. Even in Season 8, she can't be having a relationship. She's 11. The actress is 23, and the character is 23 or something. That even like 10 years from now, I think people are going to look at Maisie Williams and only want her in like child roles, as opposed to, this is a trope of child actors who have trouble breaking out of that stereotype. So I loved Bella Ramsey on Game of Thrones, don't get me wrong. It is hard to find a child actor that good, and she nailed it. And I don't think she's a one-hit wonder. I've seen her work. She has good range. She was in that Worst Witch show on BBC and stuff in the UK. I'm worried about writers typecasting her in that one thing over and over again. And like the Britney Spears thing, like Game of Thrones characters, they build up that caricature of a public persona that they're supposed to fit. And people came here to see that same character over and over again, rather than letting her grow as an actor and have a real career with characters of depth. So I was really worried about that at first. I like Bella Ramsey, but I'm worried you're typecasting her, even though I think Ellie is a pretty rounded role. It's the central role. It wouldn't be a minor thing. I think she would have range in that kind of a role. And I do see this as a breakout for her. It also reminds me a lot of what happened to Daphne Keane after the success of the Logan movie. She played X-23 in the Logan movie, and it was this big breakout. And just this past year, tying it all together, on HBO's His Dark Materials show, I was happy that Daphne managed to become the lead Lyra on His Dark Materials, which is quite different if you think about it from X-23, who doesn't talk a lot, who's this almost feral fighter. Not like that on His Dark Materials. That in Season 2 of His Dark Materials, Bella Ramsey is a guest star. And she plays this other character on it, and they have scenes together. And I just kept worrying. It's weird when you see the screenshot of it that both of these were child actresses who were in danger of being stereotyped and typecast as the feisty young tyke bomb, the feisty young tomboy who's doing stuff. And the roles have more range even in His Dark Materials. And they're actually both roughly the same age. Actually, Bella is a year and a half older than Daphne. So I worry about, we think of this as, oh, haha, this is my funny character. These aren't cartoon characters. And looking back on it, not just in Game of Thrones, but a lot of things, how we tend not to think about how hard it is for child actors. I'm kind of happy that the Game of Thrones prequel show House of the Dragon doesn't really have demanding child actor roles on the level that Game of Thrones did. It's got teenager roles, but that's not the same thing. On the level of Arya and Bran, where there was a lot of pressure on those child actors. So I was feeling weird about, is Bella okay? Is Daphne okay? Is Maisie okay? because there's still a ton of pressure on Maisie Williams, and you see this happening. Well, Game of Thrones had terrible writing by the end of course. They're typecasting Bella, they were typecasting everyone. And I'm happy that, no, it wasn't a one-hit wonder. She had a career outside of this. She's been doing stuff in the UK. She got into his Dark Materials. It's great. And given that Ellie is the lead character of The Last of Us with Joel, they're the two leads in the poster artwork, I'm pretty sure she'll have more range than just I'm the typecast feisty young kid. She'll be like 18 when they start filming this next year. She's 17 now. Just people don't comprehend. They have this mental image of the child actor they saw in season 6, which was 4 years ago. When she's filming next year for Last of Us, it'll be 5 years after that. She grew up. And just after all the Free Britney stuff and the talks about the pressure that Whedon was putting on his teenage actresses, I worry about that we take for granted the pressure the child actors are under. And I'm worried about Bella being stereotyped. When I heard that Pedro Pascal is the lead in this show and he's great, a lot of my fears were alleviated because I think they'll be able to treat this project more seriously with a big name actor like that. They couldn't as easily get away with something like that. I don't think this project is going to fall apart. They'll take it seriously if Pedro is the lead actor, as opposed to fears that if they just dash this off, HBO won't really take it seriously. Pedro's a moneymaker. They'll be paying attention to this. I don't think they'll let Bella be stereotyped by bad writing on it. We shall see. It's just, I know this has been a rant. I'm not an expert on any of this, just I worry about how much the actors get stereotyped, particularly child actors, and that we should be concerned about that instead of going, hooray, Maisie Williams, she's so badass. Hooray, Bella Ramsey, she's so feisty. We need to be vigilant about that kind of thing. Well, tell me your thoughts in the comments section on this, about everything going on in the news and this. And I am looking forward to this show now that, with Pedro involved, and Mason is a good writer from Chernobyl. Just, I worry. And we should have thought of that more. I didn't really realize maybe the actors are miserable on this and it's just fake smiles on Game of Thrones until like after season 5. And things we found out later of that it really was not a good experience on set.